Harlan County, Kentucky, USA. They're no stranger to violence. In fact, on June 14th, this Lex18.com news story says that a Charles Webb, 59-year-old Charles Webb, was shot to death at his residence on Pope Hill Road in Harlan County. And then they said that the investigators interviewed Webb at the hospital and were told by him that he had been shot by Ruby Webb, his wife. She was charged with murder. She is she's in jail, and she's been charged with murder. So apparently, when you're a citizen and you kill somebody, then they take that serious, and you're charged with murder. You're sitting in jail awaiting trial, and then you go through the entire judicial process, and then we'll see where you end up. Now, this happened in July. This was last month. Now, just recently, and only recently, have people started talking about this, and so I'm just going to go through the details through some of these articles. So this article here is the HarlanDaily.com. It reports that a man is shot dead by a gunshot following an alleged altercation with law enforcement in the Woodland Hills community. This is posted August 11th, so this is 15 days ago, 2 weeks. So this is according to the Kentucky State Police Public Affairs Officer Shane Jacobs. This is an article written by Joe P. Asher. They say at 6:54 p.m., Kentucky State Police Post 10, Harlan received a call requesting assistance in an officer-involved shooting. Jacobs said the shooting occurred in the Woodland Hills area of Harlan County. At Harlan County at this time, we have one male individual who is deceased from a gunshot wound. And he said that it wasn't a member of the law enforcement. Preliminary investigation indicates personnel from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which comes from the fame of Waco, right? It was the ATF at Waco. The Lexington Police Department and the Lexington Fire/Arson Unit were involved in an altercation with an individual. As a result of that altercation, deadly force was utilized. A male individual was pronounced deceased, and no further information is available. So they said there was an altercation. So an argument. They insulted him. They called him names. Who is this man? Who shot the other man? If they know of the people that were involved, the ATF, the Lexington Police Department, I'm already asking too many questions, right? Lexington Police Department, what is the Lexington Police Department doing in Harlan County? And then what is the Lexington Fire, Arson Unit? So the fire department was there to defuse the bombs. You go to the fire department for that? Don't we have bomb specialists? I don't know. So the Lexington police had actually, I think they were involved in a guy with a cat or a dog in Richmond. He had like a cat or dog and he ran away. And this was 1 or 2 years ago. So, of course, we know a little bit about, just the history of Kentucky. And we have, so far last year, 33 people were murdered were killed by the police. 33 people were executed by the Kentucky police in 2015. This year it's 14, maybe 15 people were killed in 2016. And there are several of those shootings were very suspicious. And we don't have any body camera. We don't have any actual evidence. And personally, it feels like they treat the people, like we're stupid. They treat us like we're dumb. So it's almost kind of like the Iraq War. They didn't want us to see the footage that was happening in Iraq, the damage that was being done, and then they didn't want to see the American troops' bodies coming back in a coffin draped with the American flag. And so they think that they can sanitize the war. They think that they can pretend that they're not actually showing us what's going on. They're not forthcoming with information, and then we're just left, to wonder what really happened. Makes me think about the Orlando shooting. The Orlando shooting, all I was able to find was just 3 pieces of evidence that the shooting actually occurred. That gives lots of ammunition for conspiracy theorists to say that the shooting didn't even happen. There was a lady that was, she filmed herself for 15 seconds, and then you heard gunshots, and then later on she would be found dead. And then there is a person in the bathroom that for, about 30 seconds filmed people in the bathroom. So you had footage of somebody in the bathroom, you had footage of somebody inside that was filming themselves. And then that's it. You have a bunch of personality, military, or police officers outside of the building. You saw people being taken out on stretchers and put on EMS. I mean, that's it. But there wasn't. I mean, it just be forthcoming with information. Let us know. You're the good guys. Let us know. Tell us that you're the good guys. We're just supposed to trust the government. Governments lie. That's what they do. They lied with the sinking of the USS Maine. They lied with the Lusitania. They lied with WMDs in Iraq. They lied with the Gulf of Tonkin incident. Gulf of Tonkin, it escalated the Iraq War. Every one of those incidents started a war. And they lied about it. And so, we need to know about what is going on, what is real. So if these police officers had body cameras and they're on the entire time that they were there, you're the good guy. You're the good guy. You did what you were supposed to do. Then the camera exonerates you. It acquits you. You're a good guy. You did what you're supposed to do. But if you're a bad guy, well, you don't want the video to show that. So there's a shooting in the middle of the woods. What happened? We don't actually know. We don't actually know what the hell happened. The only way that I'll know by any of these people's testimonies from the Lexington Police, from the Lexington Fire Department, or the ATF is when they go to criticize, or when they go to say what had happened, they also mix in criticism. If they say, well, Jim Bob, he started getting crazy, and if that Jim Bob's a police officer and they're being critical, he got a little crazy, okay. If you mix good and bad, but if you're just saying we are the good guys, he is the bad guy, and then that's it, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. Not at all. If you're a police officer, if you got a badge and a uniform, you can do no wrong. That's such bullshit. You have authority. You have power, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. You are more capable of committing atrocities and crimes, especially if you can get away with it. There was that rapist in Breckinridge County. A police officer was raping a 15-year-old. So to assume that they cannot commit crimes is ridiculous. Let's go to WYMT.com. Let's see what they said. Now, they named the guy. This is a couple days later. So this is Mark Sawaf, August 14th, 2016, by Nathan Little. Now, Mark Sawaf, he's a Harlan man, and he was accused of rigging trail cameras with explosives, and he was shot and killed Thursday night in Harlan County. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Now we know the person's name. Mark Sawaf, S-A-W-A-F. And they said in June, Sawaf, let's see, S-A-W-A-F, Sawaf. Okay, so Sawaf, Mark. We'll go with Mark. Mr. Sawaf. So Mark is, let's see, they had an investigation by the ATF after the trail cameras were rigged with explosives. So he owns this land, and he's got these woods, and he's got the game cameras, and the game cameras is put into a tree, so when a deer goes by, they take the picture, and then therefore you know that there are deer in the neighborhood. And sometimes they'll tell, the household, so that way you know, oh, there's deers around. Now, sometimes there are people that want to come onto the game trails, onto your land, so it also tells you when there's trespassers. Now, what Mark had actually got in trouble for was that he rigged these game cameras up so that if somebody was trying to steal his cameras, that it would explode. And so it was an improvisational explosive device, an IED. And an IED makes me think of Iraq and the insurgents. People basically make up their own bombs, and there's an insurgency, so they make their bombs from small materials. And I heard that he made his materials, his bomb with a 9mm shell, a little gunpowder, and a copper wire. And that's what a bomb-making device is, a copper wire, 9mm shell, and gunpowder. So those things, lots of gun owners have all those things. So if you have a 9mm shell and some gunpowder and a copper wire, do you have bomb-making supplies? Now, apparently this guy has money. He's well known in the community. His father had got busted for OxyContin. He overprescribed OxyContin. He was a doctor or a pharmacist, and he wound up being one of the first people that was prosecuted for overprescribing OxyContin, which he was to blame for the OxyContin epidemic. Now, what had happened, okay, so you have these game cameras, And this is what it says here. It has the game cameras, and it was rigged in such a way that it would explode if you tried to steal it. I heard if you put batteries into it. So apparently it didn't have batteries, or maybe it was, I don't know, it was on electric, or maybe it was meant for people to take and to steal. And so I'm mixed on this a little bit. Let me explain why, but let's finish up. Okay, so the game camera is set up there. Somebody stole the camera, and they did something with it, put batteries in it, or did something to trigger the IED off, and then it blew up in the guy's hand. And the guy was apparently a thief. He was stealing somebody's camera, and so he blew his hands off, and that sucks. He blew several of his fingers off, but it was that explosion that led the ATF to go to Mark's house and arrest him. And so he was arrested for that, and that was in June, so 2 months ago. Now, while Mark was in jail, he was awaiting his trial, but several investigators wanted to take him out. What they want to take him out for? Well, they want to see if there was any other explosives, any other game cameras around that was tied with these IEDs. And so they took him to Harlan, and they wanted him to locate several more of the explosive devices that was believed to be in the woods, possibly near the city. So the ATF requested the assistance of the Lexington Police Department Hazardous Devices Unit, and also the Lexington Fire Department Fire Investigation Unit, and the Kentucky State Police Hazardous Devices Unit. So the first report didn't tell us about this KSP being there. So you had the ATF, Lexington Police, Lexington Fire Department, and the KSP Hazardous Devices Unit. Several of the explosive devices were destroyed Thursday evening. So they found these explosives and they destroyed them. So Mark took them, that's what they wanted. They pulled him out of jail and they went to several of the explosives and they destroyed the explosives. Now, this mentions that Mark tried to run from the authorities, which caused an altercation. Again, an altercation. What happened, we don't know. He's surrounded by ATF, KSP, Lexington Police, and Lexington Fire Department. So he's got, what, a dozen, 20 people surrounding him. It seems weird that he think that he could attack them or that he could grab one of their guns and shoot him his way out of this situation. That's what, there's one theory that perhaps he had a cadre of weapons. So while he's going to these different explosives to these game cameras that are, laden with IEDs, there might have been a cadre of weapons. He might have had a weapons hole, and he ran to the weapons hole, but instead they shot him in, maybe in the back or some shit. I don't know. I'm not for sure. I'm not 100% exactly what had happened, and nobody really knows. There's no camera, and of course, we're just going to take the words of the ATF who caused Waco, and look at Waco. There were people that was inside of, that compound, and they said a totally different story than what the ATF had said. But the only person that could tell us a different story is dead. And if everybody is saying that they did all good and that nothing happened, why did an altercation happen? Why did this happen? He reached for the gun, just out of nowhere, reached for the gun. And if you're running away, can't you run after him and go get him? Are you shooting him in the back? Okay, so this is WYMT. And then it says the Kentucky State Police in Harlan will handle the shooting investigation. And then Mark's body was sent to Frankfurt for an autopsy. And then the Kentucky State Police warns everybody to use extreme caution when going out into the woods. And so that's another article. Here's another article here that says WBIR. It says they identified the Harlan man, Mark Sawaf, they misspelled his S-A-W-A-R-F. They said he was 39 years old, died from a gunshot wound. They say the police department, Lexington Police Department, along with the Lexington Fire, were doing a follow-up investigation, and then that's when it happened. The ATF were there, and again, they didn't mention the KSP was there, but the KSP, they did get the word from them. So it seems like they kind of piggybacked from that first article I read. Now here's Kentucky.com. And this is August 12th, so this would have been the day after. Man in custody killed trying to escape during officer search for explosives in the woods. So let's see what they have, if there's anything different. So same thing, concealing explosives in trail cameras, putting them in the woods. They said that he'd been indicted by a federal grand jury. So this is the feds, the ATF, right? That's the feds. And he'd been indicted in July. He was scheduled to go to trial September 13th. According to court documents, he was ordered to remain in custody until trial and was indicted on 8 charges, including owning and making unregistered destructive devices. So that's the charge, making IEDs, making unregistered destructive devices. So if you make an IED, then you have to register that. Okay, so Mark, he was indicted, and then he was going to go to trial. Lexington Fire Department investigator Captain Brad Dubrinsky. He shot Mark during the altercation, which occurred after Mark tried to escape, state police said. ATF Special Agent Todd Tremaine and Lieutenant Matt Greathouse of the Lexington Police Department Hazardous Unit were also involved in the altercation that broke out on a hill above Woodland Hill subdivision about 6:50 p.m. So there's 3 people that were involved in the altercation. Brad Dubrinsky, which is that a Polish name? Brad Dubrinsky is the one that actually killed him. He's actually one that had shot him, and he was a Lexington Fire Department investigator. So I don't even know if that's a police officer. And I also heard that it was his personal weapon. So Lexington Fire Departments are killing people now. Now, the ATF Special Agent Todd Tremaine and Lieutenant Matt Greathouse. And Greathouses, they were actually the ones that had started the American Revolution with the Yellow River Massacre against Johnny Logan's. But that's 200 years ago, right? I don't know if he's related to those Greathouses or not. Anyways, those are the 3 names: Todd Tremaine, Matt Greathouse, and Brad Dubrinsky. They were involved in it. Okay, so the ATF received information that Mark had placed more explosives in the woods and gone with him to find them. Then they needed help, so they asked Lexington police and fire officials because of an expanded area that needed to be searched to scale the operation. They needed to search lots of woods, and the State Police Hazardous Devices Unit was also asked to assist. So the Kentucky State Police, the ATF, Lexington Police, and Lexington Fire Department. You had 4 agencies who were there on the scene. And if there's a dozen or 20 people, I would like to think that they are going to do an autopsy and they'll take this, investigate this like any other killing, right? We saw when that Ruby Webb, or that lady, had killed her husband, they charged the murderer, put the murderer inside jail, and then they're going to go through the Criminal Justice Department. My guess is that Brad Dubrinsky is still free, hasn't been charged with the crime, and he's allowed to walk around. And so, it's just, we're looking at 2 different kinds of justice here. This is Harlan County is where that TV show Justified comes out of. And so what's justified? When is it justified to kill another person? Well, you have a right to self-defense. And in the TV show Justified, they had, the TV show, there's a fictional Justified, and then there's a cops version of Justified in Harlan County. I don't know if that's the name of it, but in Justified, it was the fictional place, but I believe it was in the hills, perhaps Harlan County. Okay, so what's Justified? So what's Justified? The very first scene, he says you need to get out by sundown, and then the guy pulls his gun. So they both have guns and they're holstered. But when he pulled his gun, then it was self-defense. He pulled his gun, he pulled his weapon first. So it's like a duel almost, like a duel, they're faced off, and then whoever pulls first, the other person shoots him, and then they're justified in doing so. So the group had found several trail cameras in the woods before the shooting, and bomb technicians searched the area Friday for more explosives and some other things. It's going to be a very big task. They say it's the first time that a Lexington fire investigator has killed somebody ever. They said that fire investigator has been carrying guns since 1996, and then the last city officer involved shooting was in 2009. So after his arrest in June, an order required Mark to be detained while he awaited trial. And he's also, I think he's Syrian. I think he's Muslim. He's got brown skin. So is there a racist element to any of this? In May, a man lost multiple fingers. We already got that. And they found, the man had gotten the cameras from someone who found them on a trail near Red Dog Road. So Red Dog Road. There's possibly cameras around there in the Woodland Hills area. After identifying Mark as a suspect, investigators executed a search warrant on his house in June, and then they found materials, they said, that was consistent with bomb-making explosives. They found a trail camera explosive, a flashlight with blast damage, a section of PVC pipe filled with unidentified black powder, hot glue, and coins. So PVC pipe, coins, hot glue, and black powder. I even heard that the 9mm shell and copper wire. So actually I had two other things that this Kentucky.com article the day after didn't mention. During their search in June, investigators also found a workbench in the home. The plastic jug contained black powder, a rock tumbler containing a suspected explosive powder, copper wires, a handwritten note with explosive mixtures. The portrait, the evidence paints of Mark as of a dangerously duplicitous individual, loving and caring to those who know him, but secretive and anonymous explosive manufacturer whose devices are left for any hapless member of the public to find and trigger with serious resulting injuries. It doesn't say whether or not it was on his land or not his land. If it's on his land, I think don't you have a right? I mean, no, you don't want people to start booby-trapping their own land with mines because you never know who might wander on your land. But if people are robbing and stealing, I don't know. I mean, nobody wants their hand blown off, but then, I don't know. So, okay, let's keep on going. It said testimony said he was a highly educated, hard-working business owner responsible for the well-being of others, stable finances, personal relationships, and he had no criminal convictions of any kind. He was an avid hunter, owned and operated Harlan Counseling since 2014, and he had a master's degree in mental health counseling. And the business was in a small strip of offices just off of US 421. So Mark, whose modest two-story house was on a hill near downtown Harlan, said Friday he was quiet and had little interaction. So this guy's like, he seemed a little leery. There was something wrong with him. He was real quiet, kept to himself. He acted like he didn't want to talk to nobody. I was worried he might go crazy and shoot somebody. That's what Tracy Medford said. And, so yeah, Mark worked at the Cumberland Behavioral Health in Harlan before starting his own practice. Perry, a team leader who worked with Mark, said Mark grew up in Michigan and moved to Harlan with his family after high school. He was extremely intelligent, almost borderline genius. Mark got along with coworkers at the office, but did not associate with them outside of work. Mark was extremely social liberal and was an atheist, which aren't mainstream views in Harlan County. Before Mark's June arrest, he'd been investigated for using explosive targets, but it was determined that he was using the devices illegally. So he's using these explosives to kill the deer? Is that what he's doing it? Perhaps for it to trigger and kill the deer? More than a decade before Mark's arrest, his father, Ali Sawaf, was convicted on 8 charges related to distribution of Oxycontin and other painkillers. At the time of his conviction in 2002, Ali Sawaf was a urologist in Harlan County. So, it looks like a doctor, right? A urologist is a doctor. The case was one of the first Eastern Kentucky against a doctor for over-prescribing Oxycontin after the abuse of the drug exploded in the region beginning in the late 1990s. Okay, so that's the official version. That's the version that the media has dug up and the authorities, combined with the authorities' testimony. So, now that's the official version. Now I want to sort of float some theories out there. Now, the idea that there might have been a weapons hole and he was running after the weapons hole and they shot him because he was running after weapons, I am not for sure if that's a good theory or not. This is anonymous comments. People post anonymous comments on the internet. I read them, and somebody had floated that as a theory. Maybe there was a weapons hole. And so if we find out that there was no weapons hole, then I think that it's going to be a little suspicious. You got 12, 20 people there, 4 different departments, ATF, Lexington Fire and Police, and KSP, who are all there, and all of a sudden the several explosives had already been detonated, so he found like 5 or 6 of them, and they exploded them, and then he was helping them find some more, and then he was shot and killed. So they say he reached for a gun. Doesn't make any sense that you would just reach for a gun after you've helped people, that you found, several of them, and that there's 12 to 20 doesn't make any sense. And he was an unarmed man, and he was in chains. 12 to 20 people. He's unarmed. He's in chains. So there's the idea, some theories that were floated. One person, this was a big theory, that perhaps Brad Dobrinsky had a woman that Mark and him were both interested in. Mark and him where he was with this woman, and then eventually the woman finally said that she was, with Brad Dubrinsky, and so Mark tried to break it off. She says that she's pregnant, and so he gets blood test or pregnancy test to see if there was actually something going on. Because what is the Lexington fire, chief doing, or deputy? What's he doing in Harlan County? And I guess they say it's a hazardous unit, so they wanted a bunch of people, but they're fire departments. If anything, that's why you like firefighters. They're not going to shoot you. They don't come to your house to kill you. They come out to save your house, to put out the fire, and to save your kids, and to pull you out of the house if you happen to trip and, fell or something. So, and also the anonymous comment says that it was own personal gun. So so that's one theory that's put forward, that they had a common love interest, and instead of actually going for the IEDs, instead of going through the trial, he was making money. He was successful. He had money. He was a businessman, and so therefore the trial would have implicated a lot of people. Nobody wanted to see any of this happen, and so they pulled Mark out to, theoretically, or to, go after the other IEDs, but then killed him execution style. Just killed him in cold blood. Because, you're sleeping with my woman, how dare you sleep with my woman? And supposedly it could have been an abusive relationship. Now, that's a theory. That's an anonymous theory. So there's really no basis to that. But if, in terms of explanations, the official explanation doesn't make any sense. Out of nowhere, he just loses his mind and says, I'm going to get a gun and shoot 20 people. I'm going to shoot 4 different agencies who's all around. Perhaps if he's looking for an IED, they're all following him. He just starts running. Even if he starts running, what do they expect? What do they think? So you can run and chase him down, but they think there's a weapons hole and that he's about to go trigger something. I think if there's any fear of that happening, you don't let him walk ahead. You have 2 people flanking him, one person in front and the other person behind him. You just have it really orderly. And so either there's a lack of organization on the authorities' part, or that's bullshit. He didn't run away. There was no weapons hold. He wasn't going to no trigger nothing. They said that there was an altercation. I'd like to know a little bit more details about that altercation, and I'd like to hear some truth. If you think about all of the previous videos of, say, police shootings, let's take the Baton Rouge shooting. I think it's Baton Rouge, where the big, fat guy, where the guy runs up to him and he shoots him in the chest, and then afterwards he's like, fuck, right? He was all pissed off at himself for having to kill this guy, shoot this guy in the chest. Well, that's a detail that I think is necessary. And then afterwards he shouts fuck because he didn't want to have to shoot the guy. And so if a person is saying, well, we thought he was doing this, we tried to arrest him, then he got aggressive with us, there was an altercation, he was going for the gun, and so I had to shoot him, and he did everything, the cop did everything right, and then the black dude did everything wrong, and he's an angel and he's the devil, I don't believe you. Now if you say, well, the guy goes up to him and he's yelling at him and he says, he's trying to get his hands behind his back and they're wrestling with him, and he shouts out that he's going for a gun. It didn't look like he was actually going for a gun, but apparently he thought that he was, and then he shoots him in the chest, and then he was like, fuck! He shouts fuck real loud. You tell me that story, I believe you. You're mixing a little bit of bad, a little bit of good, because it's the truth. You're telling me the truth. And if there's 12 to 20 people that was there, then that means, hopefully, before they die, one of them actually tells us what happened in the woods in Harlan County. Out in the middle of the woods, 12 to 20 people, and one guy. So that's, that isn't a fair fight to begin with. And so their story doesn't make sense at all. Now, which theory makes more sense to me? Could, of all those guys, have been involved in an execution style? I don't think that's really true either. And so I don't know which one is, neither one of those theories are believable, that Mark tries to, shoot all the people. That doesn't make any sense. And the fact that Mark and Brad Dubrinsky were interested in the same woman, that doesn't sound likely either. It's possible, but 12 to 20 people are going to go to Harlan County so Brad Dubrinsky can execute this guy. Now, there's another article that comes out that said that when they took his laptop that there was child pornography. And so, who gives a shit about his life now, right? I've noticed that on TV, a lot they were talking about the police officer that was shot in Maryville. He gets a parade, he gets, it's just lavish, how much, and he was a good guy and every life matters. Well, if every life matters, then Mark's life mattered too. And that's just an allegation, right? We have a court process. You can't, if one person just says, "Oh, I saw this thing on his computer," and that's it. That's all we had to go on. And then there was